Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and it looks like the iPhone 13 is already a hot topic just a few weeks into 2021, and now we're getting some decent reporting from multiple sources on what we can expect for Apple's next iPhone, and some important design changes and features that you'll want to know all about. Let's start with the design of the iPhone 13. Now, normally, you wouldn't expect any major design refreshes this time around, considering that the iPhone 12 was a redesign of the iPhone 11. And normally, Apple would keep a design for about 3 years before they make any major design changes. However, Apple has implemented smaller design changes over the years, things like adding more cameras, the styling of the cameras, different colors, and other smaller changes. So for the iPhone 13, don't expect a major redesign. It should still look largely the same as the iPhone 12 with its reduced bezels and flat sides. But with that being said, Mako Takara is reporting that Apple is planning to make the iPhone 13 slightly thicker than the iPhone 12 by 0.26 millimeters. This could potentially mean fitting in more components into the body of the iPhone 13. I think personally that this could be a move to put in a bigger battery size for all iPhone 13 models, especially models like the smaller iPhone 13 mini and the regular sized iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 Pro, because one of the issues with the iPhone 12 Pro was that the battery was actually worse when you compared it to the iPhone 11 Pro. So this might be Apple trying to get some of that battery life back, and they might be adding an even bigger battery to compensate for another feature for a 120 Hz display, but we're gonna talk about that later in the video. And even if they aren't adding that feature, for phones like the iPhone 12 mini, adding in a bigger battery would be really nice, because even if we could just get an extra hour of battery life out of the iPhone 12 mini with its smaller size, that would be a big improvement. And hopefully it will mean that we get even better battery life as 5G continues to expand its network. Because 5G does take up a lot of battery life, so maybe Apple is trying to plan for that as more 5G cellular towers come online. As for the front of the device, year after year, I feel like we've been hearing about a smaller size notch, and every year, Apple just doesn't budge. Tim Cook does not want to get rid of that notch for you. It's like a personal vendetta for him that you want a smaller notch, and he just wants you to accept the notch for what it is, a masterpiece. Anyway, this year the rumors are pretty much the same, and rumors are saying that the iPhone 13 will finally be the iPhone to get a smaller size notch by moving the earpiece up and just fitting the true depth sensors into that narrow strip. Now listen, I'm kind of doubting this rumor just because we've heard it so many times before, and I almost feel like Apple likes the way the notch looks, not because Tim Cook has a vendetta against you, but because it really does make the iPhone stand out in a sea of very similar looking Android phones. With that being said, if Apple can make the notch smaller, I'm sure that would make a lot of people happy, although I personally would be more excited to see an iPhone with the cameras and sensors behind the display so they can hide the notch completely and just give us a full screen display. Another design change mentioned in this Mako Takara report is that Apple is thinking about putting one piece of sapphire glass over the camera bump rather than 3 separate glass pieces over each lens. And this would make it look like there's just one camera on the back rather than 3 separate cameras. I think I heard a rumor last year with the iPhone 12 that Apple was exploring an option similar to this where they could black out the lenses on the back of the iPhone 12. Maybe that's this rumor coming over to the iPhone 13, but either way, that would be actually a pretty nice design element if they could pull it off. Speaking of the cameras, we aren't expecting any major improvements to the iPhone 13's main wide-angle camera this year in terms of hardware, at least according to supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. However, we might see improvements to the smaller iPhone 13 Pro model by bringing over the technology from the iPhone 12 Pro Max, like sensor shift stabilization and the bigger sensor size. Again, that's currently exclusive to the Max model, and that could mean that these are finally coming over to the smaller Pro size model and maybe even the regular iPhone 13s. Now, even though the wide-angle lens will basically stay the same based on this report by Quo, there are reports that the ultra-wide-angle lens will be getting a nice upgrade on the iPhone 13. This will be in a few ways. First of all, the aperture of the ultra-wide will go from an f2.4 to an f1.8, which would allow the ultra-wide-angle lens to let in a lot more light. This would make it a much better option for using in low-light situations like at nighttime or indoor shots without having to engage the night mode feature, resulting in cleaner and sharper images. Secondly, Apple will increase the elements of the lens from a 5-element lens to a 6-element lens. This improvement would largely help with reducing distortion in the ultra-wide-angle lens. Lastly, apparently the ultra-wide camera will be getting autofocus capabilities on the ultra-wide-angle lens, which apparently currently uses a fixed focus, and this could help with getting closer ultra-wide-angle shots and also introducing more natural bokeh in combination with the faster aperture. Another camera change that will affect the regular iPhone 13 model is that Apple will be putting a LiDAR scanner on all iPhone models for 2021, according to a report from Digitime. So even if you pick up the regular iPhone models next year, they should all have a LiDAR scanner. And this actually makes a lot of sense. If Apple truly wants to make a bigger push with augmented reality, they need every phone they sell to start having augmented reality sensors that would make viewing and possibly creating AR experiences even easier. As I imagine when Apple is ready to ship their long-rumored AR glasses, one of the ways developers will be able to make apps for those glasses without owning them is by using an iPhone with a LiDAR scanner. So this is definitely about seeing the bigger picture of AR, even if it isn't quite that great of an experience on the iPhone yet. Okay, I don't want to leave you hanging with the 120Hz stuff, so the display. We are now getting multiple reports that Samsung will be supplying Apple with LTPO OLED displays for the iPhone 13. For those of you that don't know, LTPO stands for low temperature polycrystalline oxide, and this will allow Apple to use a variable refresh rate on these iPhone models with an OLED display, much like they currently do with the 120Hz ProMotion display found on the iPad Pro, but that is using a different technology because it uses an LCD panel. However, the concept here is pretty much the same as the iPad Pro. So normally when you run a display at 120Hz, it is a huge drain on the battery life because you're literally doubling the refresh rate of a 60Hz phone. So adopting an LTPO OLED display gives Apple a lot of different options here to help preserve battery life. Now, okay, if you're playing a game or say like you're scrolling on a website or through Twitter, Apple could then engage the full 120Hz, so every interaction you have is incredibly smooth. Then what they can do is ramp down the refresh rate when you're watching a movie or just staring at a picture or just plainly not interacting with your display, and this would allow Apple to preserve battery life while still giving users an iPhone display with a faster refresh rate that would make animations appear smoother than they currently do on 60Hz panels. So this is a way for Apple to have their cake and eat it too. Apple already uses LTPO displays on their Apple Watch. However, they use this in a different way because they take the refresh rate and actually ramp it down all the way to 1 Hz to enable an always-on display while still preserving battery life. We could see Apple use this kind of technology for the iPhone 13 as well, so they could have the 120Hz display and also an always-on OLED display, much like they do on the Apple Watch. By lowering the display to 1 Hz, Apple could preserve the battery life of the iPhone 13 while giving it an always-on display. They could then use this to show different status indications like the time, battery life, calendar, weather, reminders, or whatever. And I actually think this would be particularly useful now because iOS 14 supports widgets, and this could make them even more useful, as if the iPhone has an always-on display, that information could be available to you just by glancing at your phone. The lack of a ProMotion 120Hz display was one of the bigger complaints with the tech community overall about the iPhone 12. So if you were disappointed about that, for these iPhone models, it looks like the iPhone 13 should solve that issue, at least for the Pro models, as currently based on this reporting, the LTPO displays will only be available on the top 2 iPhone models, so that means the more expensive Pro models. But anyway, that's all the new updates regarding the iPhone 13, which honestly, it seems like we have a bunch of feature leaks and it's only January. It will be interesting to see how many of these new rumors and leaks are featured in the final iPhone 13 and what changes along the way. But as for now, this is pretty much all the major changes we are expecting for the iPhone 13. And be sure to let me know in the comments below, what do you think so far about these rumored changes? And what features do you want to see on the next iPhone? Also, if you like this video, be sure to leave me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, well, obviously make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to help the channel out in any way, make sure you check out some of the links in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Without you guys watching, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. So honestly, a big thank you to everyone, especially if you made it to the end of this video. Like, give yourself a round of applause. All right, take care. Have a great day. That was different, right? That was a bit different from the usual outro. Cut.